Turn off the visible light, switch on ultraviolet, and a bird that looked completely ordinary 1 second ago is suddenly glowing, its feathers radiating blue, violet, and white light in patterns that were invisible to every human eye that ever looked at it. For most of scientific history, nobody knew. The birds knew. They have been signaling to each other in a spectrum of light that humans cannot see, using colors we did not know existed on their feathers, communicating information we still cannot fully decode, in a visual language that evolution built specifically to exclude us. In 1998, ornithologists confirmed what some researchers had suspected, that many birds see ultraviolet wavelengths that are completely invisible to human eyes. What followed changed everything scientists thought they understood about bird coloration, mate selection, and the hidden architecture of feathers. These are 20 birds that glow under ultraviolet light, and the science behind some of them still has no complete answer. Welcome to Flora Fana. 1. Blue tit, Cyanistes caroleus, Europe and Western Asia. Under visible light, the blue tit is a cheerful, familiar garden bird. Blue cap, yellow breast, white cheeks. Under ultraviolet, the blue cap transforms. The feathers that appear uniformly blue to human eyes reflect ultraviolet wavelengths so intensely that to another blue tit, which sees UV as a distinct color, the cap appears as a blazing high-contrast signal invisible to any predator without UV vision. Research published in 1998 by Anders Muller and colleagues demonstrated that female blue tits preferentially chose mates with higher UV reflectance on their caps, selecting for a quality signal that human observers had never been able to see or measure. An entire dimension of mate selection, operating in a bird found in every European garden, completely invisible to the humans watching them from kitchen windows for centuries. 2. Budgerigar, Melopsittacus undulatus, Interior Australia. The budgerigar's forehead feathers contain a compound called psittacofulvin, a pigment unique to parrots, that absorbs visible light normally but fluoresces intensely under ultraviolet, producing a yellow-green glow visible to other budgerigars whose eyes contain a fourth type of cone cell, sensitive to UV wavelengths. In a 2002 study, budgerigars with UV-reflecting forehead patches were significantly preferred as mates over birds whose UV reflectance had been experimentally reduced. The birds were making mating decisions based entirely on information that no human observer in any of the decades of budgerigar keeping had ever been able to perceive. Australia's most commonly kept pet bird, selecting partners using a communication channel humans discovered only in 2002. 3. Puffin, Fratercula arctica, North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean. The puffin's beak is dramatic under visible light, broad, brightly striped in orange, yellow, and gray during breeding season. Under ultraviolet, something unexpected happens. The beak glows. Specific regions of the beak's surface reflect UV wavelengths with an intensity that makes them visible as distinct bright areas to birds capable of seeing UV, adding information to the beak's signal that the visible spectrum alone does not carry. A 2019 study by Jamie Dunning and colleagues confirmed the UV fluorescence in puffin beaks, a discovery made accidentally when a puffin was placed under a UV lamp during an unrelated examination. The most studied seabird in the North Atlantic, carrying a hidden light signal, found by accident in 2019. 4. European starling, Sturnus vulgaris, Europe, Western Asia. The European starling's iridescent plumage shifts between green, purple, and bronze under visible light, a structural color produced by microscopic features of the feather surface rather than pigment. Under ultraviolet, the same structural features that produce visible iridescence also reflect UV wavelengths, but not uniformly. Male starlings in peak breeding condition show significantly higher UV reflectance than males in non-breeding plumage or younger birds, a signal that correlates precisely with immune function, parasite load, and overall health. Female starlings with UV-sensitive vision are reading a health report written in ultraviolet light that male starlings carry on their feathers every breeding season. The bird that is considered a pest across 3 continents, carrying a health signal in its feathers that science could not read until the late 1990s. 5. Zebra finch, Taeniopygia guttata, Australia and Timor. Male zebra finches have orange-red beaks under visible light. Under ultraviolet, the beak surface reflects UV wavelengths at levels that correlate directly with the bird's carotenoid intake, the dietary pigments that both produce the beak color and signal nutritional quality. Female zebra finches use UV reflectance from the beak as a primary cue in mate selection. Experimental studies in which UV wavelengths were filtered from a female's view consistently showed she became unable to distinguish high-quality males from low-quality ones using beak color alone. The UV component of the beak's signal carries information the visible color cannot. Remove the UV. The female loses her ability to choose wisely. Restore it. Her preferences return exactly. 6. Kestrel, Falco tinunculus, Europe, Asia, and Africa. The kestrel hunts voles, and it finds them using ultraviolet light in a way that remained unknown until 1995. Vole urine and fecal trails reflect UV wavelengths strongly, marking the runways that voles use repeatedly through grassland vegetation. The kestrel, hovering above a field, is not simply scanning for movement. It is reading a map of UV reflective vole trails written on the ground below, selecting hunting locations based on trail density, targeting areas of high vole activity before a single vole has moved within visual range. First described by Jesper Vitala and colleagues in 1995, this discovery fundamentally changed the understanding of raptor hunting behavior. A falcon using ultraviolet light to read animal footpaths in a field that looks completely blank to human eyes. 8. Common kingfisher, Alcedo athis, Europe, Asia, and North Africa. The kingfisher's blue back produces one of the most intense UV signals of any European bird. The structural color of its dorsal feathers, produced by arrays of air-filled spheres within the feather barbs that scatter light by the Tyndall effect, reflects UV wavelengths with an intensity that makes the back appear, to UV-sensitive eyes, as a brilliant signal against any natural background. A 2005 study established that kingfisher UV reflectance correlates with age and condition. Older, healthier birds reflecting more intensely across both visible and UV spectra. The bird is already one of the most striking in Europe under normal light. Under ultraviolet, it is something else entirely. A bolt of UV signal traveling at 40 miles per hour over a river, visible to everything that can see what it is carrying. 9. Mallard duck, Anas platyrhynchos, widespread across northern hemisphere. The male mallard's green head is one of the most familiar colors in the natural world. Under ultraviolet, the green head reflects UV wavelengths in a pattern distributed unevenly across the surface, certain regions of the feathers reflecting more intensely than others, creating a UV pattern overlaid on the visible green that is invisible to human observers but clearly perceptible to female mallards. Female mallards perform their mate assessment from a position beside the male, an angle from which the UV pattern on the head is maximally visible to their laterally placed eyes, the most common duck in the northern hemisphere, making mate decisions using light that humans cannot see, from an angle specifically optimized for the signal they are reading. 10. Mid-video Rehook. You are watching Flora Fana, and we are exactly halfway through 20 birds carrying signals in light that no human eye has ever seen directly. Every bird you have seen so far has been communicating in a visual language that science discovered less than 30 years ago. The next 10 entries include the birds whose UV signals science still cannot fully explain. Stay with us. 11. Bluethroat, Lucinia sphekica, Europe and Asia. The bluethroat male carries a vivid blue throat patch, already striking under visible light, that reveals under ultraviolet a UV signal of intensity disproportionate to its visible appearance. A 2003 study by Erin Amundsen demonstrated that UV reflectance from the Bluethroat patch predicted male reproductive success more accurately than visible plumage brightness alone, suggesting that the UV signal carries quality information the visible signal does not fully convey. The mechanism by which the Bluethroat feathers produce such intense UV reflectance remains incompletely understood. The structural features of the feather that generate visible blue through light scattering also produce UV reflectance, but the precise relationship between feather nanostructure and UV output has not been fully characterized for this species, a bird whose glow science can measure but not yet completely explain. 12. Hoopoe. Hoopoes, Europe, Asia, and Africa. The hoopoe's crest, dramatically striped in black and cinnamon orange, reflects UV wavelengths from its orange regions in a pattern that differs between males and females in ways invisible to human observers. Research in 2009 established that UV reflectance of the hoopoe's crest correlates with the individual's uropygial gland secretions, the oil the bird applies to its feathers during preening, which contain antimicrobial compounds that protect eggs during incubation. Birds with more effective antimicrobial preening secretions show different UV crest reflectance than those with less effective secretions. The UV signal on the crest is not just a quality indicator, it is a chemical report, converted into a visual signal about a behavior that happens in private. A crest that reports on grooming chemistry in ultraviolet, found in one of the most ancient and most widely distributed birds across 3 continents. 13. Superb Fairywren, Mallarus cyaneus, southeastern Australia. The superb Fairywren male, in breeding plumage, is an electric blue that appears vivid under visible light. Under ultraviolet, the blue crown and mantle reflect UV wavelengths at intensities that dwarf the UV reflectance of most other small birds, making the breeding male one of the most UV brilliant birds documented in Australia. What makes the Fairywren's UV signal unusual is its seasonal variation. Non-breeding males, which adopt a brown eclipse plumage, show almost no UV reflectance from the same feather regions. The UV signal switches on and off with the breeding season, the feather nanostructure that produces UV reflectance, present only in the blue breeding feathers, absent entirely in the brown eclipse plumage. The same bird, 2 completely different UV profiles, switched by season. 14. Painted bunting, Passerina cirrus, southern United States and Central America. The painted bunting male is sometimes called the most beautiful bird in North America. Electric blue head, vivid red underparts, bright green back. Under ultraviolet, each color region reflects UV wavelengths differently. The blue head producing the highest UV reflectance, the red underparts producing minimal UV signal, creating a UV contrast pattern across the bird's body that is distinct from the visible contrast pattern. A bird that appears to have 3 colors under visible light, that appears to have a different 3-color arrangement under ultraviolet. 2 simultaneous color maps on the same bird, each one visible to a different type of eye. 15. Arctic tern, Sterna paradisea, Arctic and subarctic regions. The Arctic tern's white and gray plumage appears simple under visible light, functional, clean, unremarkable in terms of chromatic complexity. Under ultraviolet, the white regions of the plumage reflect UV wavelengths intensely, a UV brightness that functions as a signal in the high-latitude environments where the Arctic tern breeds, where UV light is present at high intensities during the long Arctic summer days. The precise role of UV reflectance in Arctic tern social behavior has not been fully established. What is known is that the tern's eyes are UV sensitive, and that the UV signal from white plumage in an environment rich in UV light would be considerably more informative than the same white plumage at lower latitudes. A bird that migrates from pole to pole, carrying a UV signal calibrated for Arctic light conditions, in a plumage that most people describe simply as white. 16. Great tit, Parrots major, Europe and Asia. The great tit's yellow breast carries a UV signal that correlates with carotenoid content in the feathers, the same dietary pigments that produce the visible yellow also influencing UV reflectance in ways that are measurable and that females respond to in mate selection studies. But the great tit's UV story has an additional dimension. Research established that great tit chicks in the nest reflect UV wavelengths from their gape, the open mouth they present to parents during feeding. The UV reflectance of the gape signal correlates with chick condition, healthier chicks reflecting more intensely, and parents have been shown to preferentially feed chicks displaying higher UV gape reflectance, parents selecting which hungry mouth to feed. Using a UV signal from inside an open beak, in a nest, in the dark,